All right, Ryan, let's take a look at your paper. Mla Format first. First off, this needs to be the same font as the rest of your paper, so this needs to be Times New Roman. Your name, my name needs a space, English 12, and then you handed this in on the 17th of October, so you might want to change that. You got an extra space here you don't need. The Fall of a Man. Is this like a YouTube video where like somebody like trips and falls? I would change that. It's not very creative, and I bet you can come up with something better for a title, something more creative that kind of works into your theme, which we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so you start off with a quote, "Power is seductive, but so is love." Oh, wait, sorry. One more Mla Format thing. This is all center justified. So I'm going to change your paper. It's on video, so you can accuse me of everything. You can see how it's right here. It's center justified. I'm going to left justify. Oops. Maybe I'll just do this. I'm going to left justify your paper so that it's a little bit easier for me to look at, because it's kind of freaking me out that it's not left justified. Okay, so I changed one thing for you, so you can thank me later for that, Ryan. I'll expect like maybe a card or something. Anyways, so power is seductive, but so is love. It's a cute saying. Apparently it's from a TV show or something. Or maybe you coined it, I don't know, and they stole it. But here's, power is seductive. I get it, and that works well with Macbeth. But your second part of the quote is what doesn't work well, which is so is love. So I would expect this would be about how love conquers over power, and that's not what your paper is about at all. And it's not what Macbeth is about at all. So I would be very conscientious about changing that. So in Macbeth, no comma, by William Shakespeare, he lets power be his worst enemy and lets it go straight to his head, comma, poison his mind and also his heart. So how does that fit in with that? It doesn't. Okay. Maybe just start with power is seductive. Maybe just start with those three simple words. It's pretty powerful. 3 words I think you could use well. So he lets supernatural elements take over, controlling him in every way. The witch is in his wife. There's a lot of good things in here. What it's lacking is a lot of focus. Okay. You want to start off with a theme, which you're using this power is seductive, and talk about the power that he wanted. But you're not getting into PTSD quick enough. You're just using a lot of stuff about Macbeth, but it's ultimately not going anywhere at this particular point. Because you're talking about brainwashing, etc. But you haven't even talked about the topic of the paper, which is that he has some kind of disorder. So you need to get to that a little bit faster. He has some run-on sentences here. A period here that doesn't need to be there. And then finally you get to PTSD. Remember, you need to spell this out first and then use PTSD. You use a quote, which is good. Use an outside source, which is awesome. This is not how you do in-text citation. This is a continuation. Well, this is a continuation of your introduction. That needs to move up because the symptoms are no colon. You don't need one there. And I'm assuming these are the symptoms that Macbeth has, but you don't ever outright say that. So you need to make sure that the reader understands that these are the symptoms that he suffers from in the play. You also are missing a thesis statement, which when we talked about the theme, at the beginning here, that's your theme. What are you ultimately trying to tell us about Macbeth's PTSD? And so try to get specific with that at the end of your introduction. So you're going to move this up, add a theme. Then this gets moved down because this is the first body paragraph. He first begins to hallucinate, and that's the dagger. It's a reminder of what he may do next. Now you're going to use a quote, which I would say 90% of your classmates have used so far when they talked about hallucinations. And it's this quote: "You do not need to skip lines like the play does." And even so, this is more skipping than the play does. So you just keep it all as writing like a sentence down. And if you want to separate the line numbers, it's a slash. So you'd put a backward slash to separate the lines. So that's what you would do. The citation is correct though, so that's good. But remember, the period goes on the other side of that. So you talk about this vision that he sees and hallucinations. Now we want to see more outside sources, Ryan, when it comes to talking about the symptoms. So I want to see some outside sources for that. Outside source talking about hallucinations. All right, so Macbeth is horrified at this vision, comma, causing him to panic. See, I don't think he really necessarily panics in this scene. Maybe if you had a quote from there that showed that, I could buy into it a little bit more. This isn't the first time he experienced hallucinations. Actually, it is in the story. It's not the last time he experiences a hallucination. So here's a new sentence. You have a run-on sentence here that you need to fix. Here's another run-on, part of the run-on sentence that you need to fix. I'm going to give you some props here, Ryan. I don't think anyone brought this up as a hallucination. Everyone thought of the visions, so the dagger and Banquo's ghost and the apparitions. But this is really technically a hallucination as well, because no one actually yelled this in the chamber, but Macbeth thought he heard it. So I think that's a really good job on your part to bring that up. I think that's a really good hallucination. This part I don't get because it's getting away from hallucinations. These seem like 3 different other symptoms of PTSD. And again, you want to bring this all up together. This is all one passage about hallucinations, so make it all one paragraph. This is a sentence fragment. Actually, it's a run-on sentence, I guess. You got some space issues here, too many space. He sees his best friend's ghost, his best friend Banquo's ghost, or just say he sees Banquo's ghost. We don't have to, put that as his best friend. No comma there. With them eliminated, comma, he has nothing to fear. This is a run-on sentence again. So you want to fix that. Once you have a thesis statement, Ryan, then you can start tying that into the thesis statement. So the next one is sleep deprivation. Now in your introduction, sleep deprivation was the 4th thing you were going to talk about. So make sure you do everything in order of the introduction. Sleep deprivation, no comma, is another symptom that Macbeth experiences. Try to read that with a pause. Sleep deprivation is another symptom that Macbeth experiences. Does that sound right? Nope. So you don't need a comma there. And then you go on to the whole sleep no more thing, which is a nice tie-in to what you said up here about sleeping no more. But again, you keep this all in one line. You probably don't need all of that quote in there. This is a run-on sentence. And this is no comma here. And effect. This is the wrong effect. This is no comma there. Remember, comma conjunction, you need 2 complete sentences on both sides. So you do a good job of saying, what's in the story. It can cause health problems. You're going back to the symptoms as well. I'd love to see you quote from the source, though, that you got this information from. Need a strong transition into whatever your next body paragraph is, because you're going to talk about anxiety next. All right, Ryan, we really get into some run-on sentences here. You got so many sentences. One, anxiety is also a symptom that he has. He is so caught up with power. Here's another sentence. Here's another sentence. Here's another sentence. Here's another sentence. On and on. So you got to really break that up or add some commas if they're items in a series, something like that. You go back to this concept of choosing power over love again. I would buy into this if you actually talked about what he loves. So he loves, he loved Duncan. He loved his wife. And she chose power over their love. So there's a lot of different ways that you can look at that. But no comma there, though. He's killed them all in fear of his own life. I want you to explain that concept. I think you're getting away from anxiety, though. I want to see examples of where he had anxiety in the story. And I want to know what exactly anxiety is to you, because there's a lot of different definitions of anxiety as I look at all these papers. And I don't know if I really see any examples of anxiety. You say it causes him to see the witches a second time. I would buy into that. But he doesn't see him with a pure heart, but a darkened heart. So change that word. Even the witches have sense that he is, quote, something wicked. See how you can knock out most of that, all of this stuff, by just saying they have sense that he is, quote, something wicked. Just use that part that you want and leave the rest. All right. This should be the conclusion, but it's really not, because you keep going on to the prophecies. You got space issues here. You have, you should have some ellipses here that there's words in between all of these prophecies, because this is not just line 75. It is a lot of different lines. He's become more oblivious to danger. What do you mean by that? He's unaware of his surroundings. What do you mean by that? This is no comma here, so fix that. He's killed anyone who got in his way, but not power. What does that mean? No comma there. All right, with that said, power destroyed him. So obviously your theme is about power. So when you rewrite this paper, make sure that your thesis statement is about power. Also, your conclusion, restate your thesis, summarize your main body points, which will be your symptom paragraphs, and then end on a clincher, which you haven't done yet. So you still need to work on that. This is not how you do a works cited page. Cliff notes is not what I'm hoping that you would use for an outside source. You don't even cite most of the stuff up here, except for the va.gov, which you don't even cite down here. So obviously we got some problems with the works cited page too, Ryan. All right. It's a first draft. We can do better. You can do better. I know you can. Please come get help from me. I will try to help you as much as you can. Use Mrs. Anderson as much as possible. Just looking forward to another draft of this.